Thank you so much for joining our very first live event in our brand new community. I'm so happy to have you all here. I'm excited for all the events to come. And I think we are starting off really strong. Our guest speaker today, Julie Campbell, is joining us to talk about how to stand out in a sea of massage therapists and attract your dream clients. So this is going to be a goodie. I can't wait to pick your brain, Julie, a little bit.
So I owned a massage and acupuncture studio here in Portland, Oregon, which is where I'm located, for about 10 years. So that started around 2010. And, I started my business really not knowing much about how to run a business. I think a lot of us do that, right? I was just like, I'm going to do it. And I jumped into it, really didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot of skills, and I really struggled. And at that time, believe it or not, I know now there's quite a few massage business coaches, but at that time there was zero. There was none that I could find anyway. So there wasn't a lot of options. And I think I ended up taking a lot of business classes and such that were just more general and had to figure out how to apply those to my massage business. So over the years, I did figure it out and I found systems that worked, and then, wanted to give back to the community in a way that wasn't being done at that time. So that's how I got into business education. I started teaching at a school here in Oregon, business and insurance billing for massage therapists. And I loved it. I found that I really loved the business side of things. I love teaching. I love marketing. I know it sounds weird. There's not a lot of us in the massage field that feel like we love both. So I just found a lot of joy in that side of my business and just ended up pursuing that more and more. So now I do a mixture of things. I had a client recently call himself a multi-potentialite, and I really love that because that's kind of how I feel. I do business coaching. I have business courses. All of it's virtual. So I connect with people all around the US and even beyond, Canada, so on and so forth, to help them build successful businesses. And I also work in digital marketing with dentists. So that kind of keeps me fresh in what's happening in the digital marketing world. And generally, I just spend a lot of time talking to a massage therapist about massage business, and I love it.
Amazing. You are the perfect mixture of all the ingredients we need for someone to help with marketing. So shall we dig into overcoming imposter syndrome? I know a lot of massage therapists struggle with this, especially in the early stages of the career, but honestly, even as experienced therapists, it shows up and it throws us off. How have you seen it manifest in therapists, or actually, how can we recognize that it is imposter syndrome that is holding us back?
It's one of my favorite topics because I think that it really affects most of us in the massage realm. So let's see, how can we tell that it's showing up, or how do I see it manifest in massage therapists most often? I think it is a lot of the first thing that I notice is around pricing. So I know we had an earlier chat about this about a year ago, all about my thoughts on, how imposter shows up on pricing, but I think that's a big one. We tend to underprice our services in the massage world, and we have a lot of fear around setting boundaries and setting pricing in a way that really makes sense for our lives. And there's a lot of pieces that go into this, but a big one is imposter syndrome. When you finally do realize what you need to be charging to support your lifestyle, it's hard to get there because you're so afraid that you'll lose clients, or you want to put other people first. You feel like people are going to see you as a fraud, just to name it right out. Imposter syndrome. People are going to be like, oh, who is she to think that she's charging $150 an hour for massage? And that can be really scary. And I think that's where imposter syndrome is really rooted in our fears around, being able to put ourselves out there and be confident in our services. The other thing I'll say is exactly what we're talking about today, just feeling like you can step into your full power as a massage therapist and own your expertise. I think that we have a lot of fear around doing that and being able to stand out in the crowd in a way that feels really good and confident. And I think that that's also rooted in imposter syndrome generally. So if you're feeling a lot of fear around doing something like that and you're holding back because of that, I think that's when you know you're probably dealing with imposter syndrome.
And now the $1,000,000 question, how can people overcome that?
Yes. So first I'll say I'm going to share a free guide with you guys that has a whole list of how to deal with this. So you'll get that after the call as well. But one of my favorite ways is actually pretty simple. I tend to, when I'm feeling imposter syndrome, which I do all the time, it does not matter how long I've been in this field or how many hours of, let's just say, business or massage education I've taken, I still battle imposter syndrome. And one of the things that I find really works for me is going back to my reviews. So if you've gotten reviews and feedback from clients, I'm sure if you have been practicing at all for any amount of time or even in school, you've received some type of reviews, and likely many of those are positive. So what I'll do is I'll go back through and read through my reviews when I'm feeling imposter syndrome to remind myself of the value that other people see that I'm giving to them. So it's not just coming from me, it's coming from other people that they're saying, oh, I don't know what I would do without you. My back was killing me before I saw Julie for massage. Things like that I think are very reaffirming, and they remind me of not only how I am actually bringing value to my clients, but also that the why of why I actually do this work. So that's something that I find to be a really valuable exercise, and I do it every so often. And I also think there's lots of other good things that you can get out of doing that practice, but that's probably the biggest one that I would say that I use to get myself past those moments that feel a little bit paralyzing from imposter syndrome.
And what about when we compare? I know it's easy to compare to other people, especially on social media, how other therapists are doing, what they're doing, how successful they are. What can we do when we can't help but compare to others' success?
Oh my gosh, I feel like we could have a whole entire chat on just this one topic. There's a thing, I think, around comparing, especially with social media. It's so hard not to do it these days, and we're doing it on so many levels. Our practice, how well we're doing social media, this or that. I think you have to remember that the clients that are right for you are going to love you for your imperfections. They're going to be attracted to you because you're a real, authentic human being. And I don't think that's ever more true than with massage. It's such an intimate service that we offer. People are really trusting us, and they don't want a robot massaging them. They want a real human being who they can relate to. And guess what? Your clients aren't perfect either. So I think that's the key thing to remember, is that the most successful people online, as far as massage therapists go, that I've seen, are just their real selves, and they're not too concerned about having a polished persona. They're just out there talking about their passion for the work, and their passion and what draws people to them is going to be totally different than what draws people to you. Even if you were saying the same words, just your energy and the way that you show up is going to be the thing that people are attracted to about you. So I think there's no 1, 2, 3 step, I think, for stopping comparing yourself to people. I think it's a constant exercise of just reminding yourself that there are clients for everyone, and those right clients are going to find you, and I think it's just reminding yourself and kind of rewiring your brain every time you start to have those thoughts.
I love it. It's such a cool reminder that there is enough around. There are enough people for all of us. So when we're trying to find out what makes us special, this takes us quite nicely into finding your niche. Why is niching down so powerful? And how can it make people stand out?
Okay, first thing that I like to tell people around finding your niche. So let me zoom out a little bit and say, what does finding your niche actually mean? Because I think that that's where people get hung up a lot. And I know for me, I was, like I said, I was taking a lot of general business classes at first, and this was the key. This was the theme in every single business class I've ever taken. This was the theme. You need to find your niche. You need to niche down, blah, blah, blah. And it took me years, and I say this to comfort you all who are struggling with this idea, to actually really get what that meant for me as a business owner. Because I think it will mean something different for every single person who's building their practice. And what I'll say, just to give you an example of that, is finding your niche could be a audience. It could be a specific audience. For instance, ones we hear about a lot in the massage world are like athletes or moms or whatever the case may be. But it also could be that you are an expert in some other realm. It could be the style of massage that you offer. It could be, the experience that you create. It could be your excellent customer service, high touch customer service, something along those lines. So keep that in mind as we're talking about niche. It's really what you stand out for, and it should be connected to your values. So what are you really passionate about as a massage therapist? Who really lights you up when you work with them or doesn't? Maybe that's the place to start if you're not sure. I love working with everyone. That's what I always hear. And that's true. Most of us do really love working with everyone. But there's most likely going to be some sector of people that are more perfect for your work and for you as a person than others. So I think that's kind of the key to think about. And if you're working with people, just you have a general population and you notice that after a session, you feel a bit drained. It's not because there's anything wrong with the person, right? They haven't done anything necessarily that to really put you off, but there's like just a feeling, you just feel kind of drained. I think those are little key moments to pay attention to tell yourself like, okay, is this a theme? Are there other people I felt this way? Maybe this particular type of person just isn't right for me. So an example that I noticed in my practice was prenatal massage. So I had had clients who obviously I had worked with for a while, then they became pregnant, and then they wanted to continue working with me. I, got some training in how to do prenatal massage and do that safely. And it just drained me completely. Like I never really could get on board with doing prenatal massage. I didn't love it. And I kept trying to force myself into that box. And I just kept feeling like dreading those appointments, even though I loved those clients and I had worked with them forever. So I think there's just some little moments like that you can pay attention to. That's like, wow, after these sessions, I feel really energized. And after these sessions, I feel really drained, or I feel slightly drained even, because that's what leads to burnout. And that's what leads to a practice that doesn't really feel fulfilling, is just those little teeny things that sort of like suck your energy out or don't bring you energy. So I think that's the first thing I'll say around finding your niche, is just paying attention to what you're already doing. Another thing is your reviews, and people who end up referring to you as well. Paying attention to those people who really feel connected to your work, so much so that they're willing to take the extra time after a session and tell other people about you, look at your, write you a review, all of that kind of stuff, become your regular clients, that also will tell you a lot. So I know this is for therapists who have been practicing. For new therapists, it may take you some time to figure out who that is if you don't already know. So you may need to work with some people first to really figure out who your niche is. And that's okay also. Even if you're starting your own business, it will make it easier in the long run once you figure it out. But maybe at first you just keep it a bit more broad while you figure some of those pieces out, or you focus on things like becoming the best customer service provider that there is, or something like that. Did I answer the question, or did I go off topic there?
That was great. You answered all of my future questions too. I did want to. I did want to ask actually. You said something interesting about you've almost like following your intuition, like your instinct. That's probably your niche. Would you say that relates to the other stuff as well, like the customer service, or the presentation, or the other things that aren't necessarily your treatment? Do you feel like you're naturally gravitating to things that you're good at outside of the treatment as well, that you could focus on?
Absolutely. I think, a lot of times we tend to be great at things we also enjoy and expect. So for instance, I say customer service, that's something that I personally really look for when I go to practitioners. So it's something that I paid a lot of attention to when I had my practice, or anytime I'm working with someone generally. How can I provide an experience that is not just average, that's always above average, that always delivers more than what the person was expecting, surprise and delight, that kind of stuff. So I do think that it's very connected again to your values, so maybe that's a good place to start is, what are your mission and values as a massage therapist? What do you really want to be known for, and what do you really care about? And that is going to be different for everyone. And then how does that show up in your business as well?
So cool. The power of the why.
Yes.
I also wanted to ask about niching and specialization. We asked in the community a little while ago, I asked for people's opinion if they prefer to specialize or generalize. And I think some people mentioned that they worry specializing will limit your clientele. What do you think about that in regards to niching? Will it limit your clientele? Will it be better in the long run? Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I actually think it has the opposite effect. And I think this was something I intended to say in the first question you asked me, which is what can, niching down really help you with? So if you think about marketing your massage practice, it is a huge job, enormous. And you're already doing a big job, which is being the massage therapist. So if you own your business, you have all these other hats you have to wear, being a marketer, being an accountant, being a janitor, being customer service provider, you're doing everything. And that's a lot of energy. By niching down or specializing, you limit your need for having to craft really compelling messages for everyone, or create an experience that works for everyone. So if you zoom out and you think about it like that, feels like an impossible task. We only have so much energy. We only have so many resources, not just financial resources, but just creative resources, all of that kind of stuff. And a lot of that goes towards our massage work. So I think, first off, that is going to help you channel your energy and be great at your marketing, your messaging, running your business, creating an experience by focusing in on who's your top 1 or 2 clients that you're trying to craft this messaging and marketing for. By being awesome at that stuff for your ideal client and the people that you most attract to you, they are going to be like, wow, I loved this so much. I must tell everyone about this person. They will become brand ambassadors because they had such an incredible experience with you. And while most clients do tend to refer people like themselves, which is great if you have your right clients coming in and they're telling other clients like themselves, they're also just going to tell people, their friends, family, people they care about, and that will automatically diversify who you work with. Not to mention, we have a totally connected world right now. We have online presence. So depending on how much of that you're doing, just by having great reviews and that kind of thing, even if it seems like, oh, all these people are the same, someone who has really great reviews will also attract all kinds of people. So naturally your practice will diversify, but you may not even really need that. That's the other thing to think about. If you're doing such a great job of attracting the people that you really want to work with, if you think about how many clients you actually need to fill your books, you'll probably get full with those people already. So you won't even really have to worry about that piece. And trust me, there's enough of us who are different from each other out there that those people that aren't quite your right fit will find the right person for them. So you're not limiting their ability to get massage. You're just attracting the right people to yourself.
I know we wanted to talk about unique value proposition. What is that exactly? How does it differ from having a niche, and why is it important?
Yeah, so the unique value proposition is like, I want to say something like your guiding light or your North Star. It is like your mission statement, but it's meant to be written in a way that's more client facing, to tell people in a very concise way what you are about and who you're perfect for. That's it, as simple as I can make it. That's pretty much what I would say about it.
Okay, awesome. And how do we go about making a strong one? What do we do with it? How are we using it? Why do we need it?
Yeah, so how you make a perfect one. First, you have to really know your why. So why are you doing this work? You know, what do you want to be known for? I know I keep saying that, but it is kind of the foundation for the highlighting your unique magic. Is like, you have to really know what it is that you're doing. You didn't just get into this massage world for no reason at all. You know, most of us have really solid reasons and a backstory for why we started doing this work. You may not yet know who you want to work with, but that is a piece of the puzzle. The more you understand who you want to work with, the more your unique value proposition will really grab those people's attention. So I would say, you know, knowing your mission, knowing your values, your why, knowing who you want to work with, those are probably the starting place for crafting a really solid, unique value proposition. So you're basically going to be letting people know, like, who do you help? And what is it about your work that is going to stand out to them, or what problems do you solve for them, or what's the biggest benefit of your work that will help them in their lives and create transformation for them.
Amazing. Could you give us an example? What's yours?
Yes. Yeah. Well, actually, I brought an example of like an actual massage therapist example. So
great.
I'll give you that one. Let me, I have it written down here so I wouldn't forget it. Okay, so I help busy professionals by offering customized therapeutic massage designed to relieve stress and improve mobility. Unlike other massage therapists, I combine deep tissue with guided breath work, ensuring my clients leave each session feeling both physically and mentally recharged. So what is this massage therapist calling out? They're calling out, not necessarily, they did call out their people, busy professionals, right? So that's who they want to work with. And then also they called out a specialization that they have. So you don't have to do this part, but I'll just pull out that key piece of it is they're combining deep tissue massage with guided breath work, which is also a unique offering. Very simple and to the point, but those are probably the two key pieces of that unique value proposition. And in the free download, I have included some prompts, not only for that, but also like fill in the blank prompts, but also for your ideal client and kind of figuring out who that is also.
Could I go back on figuring out your ideal client?
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions on how people do that? Do you think they already know?
No, I actually think this is probably one of the harder pieces of everything, because I do think we get so stuck on wanting to be the massage therapist for everyone. You know, one of the things I think might be helpful for people is to see examples of other massage therapists who are doing this, or even just like, you know, posts and things like that you could use for that. I think having examples might help you frame it in your mind better. Just because I know one of the things I struggled with was just that conceptualization of what does that even really look like. So I have some examples of that in the freebie that you'll be able to see, some posts and things like that for how you might think about it. But also I did bring a couple of examples that I think might be helpful too. So whenever we want to share those, I can share those as well. But yeah, I think that's one of the things. And then also, like I mentioned before, I think looking at your current clients, if you have clients already, and trying to find some common threads between them, which can be hard if you have more of a general population. But I think combining that with your values, what you're trying to bring to the world, who you really have enjoyed working with the most. Maybe even looking a little bit into the future. What trainings are you looking at taking? You know, for instance, I know manual lymphatic drainage is really popular right now. That maybe isn't a modality for everyone. So if that's something that's really calling to you, you know, maybe that's a good place to start. If that's a route you want to take, like, who would that be perfect for. There's several populations it would be perfect for, but are all of them people that you really want to invest your time and energy into working with? So I think there's a lot of routes you could take to get there. But yeah, just asking yourself a lot of questions every day as you're working with clients or you're in school or whatever the case may be, around what's feeling good to me, what's giving me energy, what do I want the future to look like? How do I want to show up as a massage therapist in the world? I think that's really the keys in finding your right ideal client. And it may change over time. That's another thing I'll say. You might start out wanting to work with a specific person, and that may change later. And that's okay too, because we grow a lot as massage therapists as we're working as well.
When it comes to actually marketing ourselves and getting our uniqueness out there, there's a lot of, as you call it, the sea of sameness. Why first, and how can people avoid that generic same messaging?
Oh, this is one of my favorite parts of this talk. So, the why, I think that's a really good question. So I do feel like in massage school, and I don't want to blame massage schools, there's a diverse, background of massage schools out there. So they're not all created equal, but a lot of them that I have at least heard about or been part of tend to give very general and limited business and marketing information. And I think that a lot of the examples, if you are even shown any in massage school, are part of that generic offering, right? Relax and renew, whatever the case may be, and you have the person laying on the table, like, yeah, we just see the same thing. It's starting to change. And I love that. I think we're starting to get more options. Marketing is getting more sophisticated. People are taking chances online. And I love that. I love seeing it. It really excites me. I think stock images are starting to improve, which is good. But I think, we also had limited options for a really long time around what images we had, unless you paid for a photo shoot or something like that. So it's like that, those kind of stock images that we had access to really only lended themselves to basic messaging. So I would say that, once you really figure out who you want to work with and what your unique value proposition is, then you want to also match that up with all of your marketing messaging and so on and so forth. Like, your images should be images of people that you want to attract to your place. So if every image is just like, a flat, this kind of thing, it's like, I could look at 100 massage websites and really not feel very connected or attracted to any one of them. But if I see myself, smiling, sitting at the reception desk, or, laying on a massage table or whatever the case may be, then I'm going to feel much more like, wow, I'm in the right place. These people understand me and they want me there. I feel more welcomed. Marketing is, I think we think of it as sales, and I love to just disconnect that piece a little bit and think of it more as a trust building exercise and a communication tool, because that's really what you're doing. Especially like when people are doing that, they're not actually speaking to you. They're looking at your website or they're looking at your Google listing or whatever the case may be. That's like the initial relationship that you start building with them. So, if you think about it more as like a conversation versus a sales piece, then it's like your first touch point with that client is letting them know, I really want you specifically here. Like, you're not just a number on my books. You're someone I actually care about. I understand you. I know what your pain is. I know what your problems are. I have the solution for those. And I think that's really the key in marketing, is that piece. So the general messaging is actually detrimental to our field generally. I don't think it gives us any favors. It doesn't tell anybody about what massage really does for them. It hurts our profession more than anything at this point. So I think it's really important that we start to differentiate ourselves and help people understand what are they actually going to get when they come to see us, so that they can choose to be at the right place. You also don't want someone to come in expecting one thing and getting another. That's not going to be a good experience for you or them. So that's kind of the points I think around marketing and differentiating, is just really helping people choose you for the right reasons.
So win-win-win for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of the mistakes that people can avoid? The easy go-to marketing messaging that people do?
I would say the biggest one I usually see in the massage therapy world is too much information. So we tend to like to share everything. And that there may be some specifics in there that are really great. So that's not necessarily being too general. But it makes it really difficult for people to pull out what is most important for them. So keeping in mind that people generally, especially these days, attention spans are getting smaller and smaller. You have to put the most important information in very big, bold, to the point spaces, whether you're using print marketing, signage, website, whatever that is. You want to make sure it's super duper easy for clients to find the information that's most relevant to them. So that could be like the benefits of your work, who you're perfect for, your unique value proposition, who you want to work with, like all of that kind of the problems you're solving, how to book, very simple. I'm not saying you shouldn't have words that people could read if they want more information. It's just remembering that most people aren't going to spend the time to read that unless they get something that draws them in very quickly to bring their attention to that point. The other thing I'll say is it is back to everything we talked about. It's like, I think because of imposter syndrome, we get a lot of fear around saying, like, I'm the expert in this. I have spent hours studying how to relieve technique, So if you're a person who's staring at their phone or their computer like this all day, I'm your girl. I can fix this for you. We're like terrified of saying those types of statements. And I think we need to move away from that. And I do think this is rooted in a very good reason, because in school, we have it kind of beat into our heads, like you can't diagnose, you can't make guarantees, da 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 da. But I don't think that means, or was ever meant to mean, that we couldn't highlight what we're really good at and what we specialize in. So I think that's another place we need to sort of like disconnect ourselves from that fear that we're going to overstep our boundaries, because we are allowed to be experts in the field of massage therapy and in the muscles of the body. We've spent hours and hours and hours and hours studying this. And a lot of us do have areas that we're better at than others. And I think we need to get more comfortable saying so.
When it comes to making your messaging personal and unique and different, is that what you say people should focus on? Is your niche, your specializations? How can you make it unique to you?
Yeah, I think it takes a little practice. Just start trying things. I mean, honestly, one of the things I like to say, and this isn't my quote, obviously, I don't know who said it originally, but sometimes you have to do it afraid. So, I'll give you an example just from my own experience. So, that's maybe like a year or so ago, I decided I'm going to really focus on social media. Like, I want to grow my social media following, and I'm going to do this thing. And one of the ways to do that, obviously, is to create reels, So I know you do some of this, Nicole. I, have started doing this. And at first, I'm not kidding you, it was like I was about to get on a stage in front of 1 million people. I was so nervous, the pit in my stomach, like, how should I look, trying to edit. And at first, my videos were pretty bad. I actually had someone say under a video I created, "This video is terrible."
Oh no. Oh no.
Sorry, I'm not gonna lie, but looking back, she wasn't wrong. I could have been kinder about it, but but I just had to keep doing it to find the natural spot for myself in that, and now I feel much more comfortable, and it's one of my preferred types of content to create, because it's so much easier for me than doing a lot of the other, posts and things that take a lot longer to create. When it's just a reel, I can just get on there and I can talk about what's true for me, like the passion that I feel about working with massage therapists and my expertise in the realm of business. Those are things that I know. But in the beginning, I did have a lot of fear. So I had to just sort of force myself out there and fail kind of a lot to get to a place where now I know how to communicate my value. Now I know how to communicate better, the message that I want to send. But it just took some time for me to kind of figure that out. And I would say that's been true even when I was marketing for my massage practice. Like I said, the first few years I struggled. It's because I didn't really know, I didn't have practice in it. It's a skill that you have to build. And a lot of us don't start out with any foundation in that. So it just takes time and trying things out to find what's right for you. So I'm not saying you have to go create reels. That might be one thing that you try to see how it works for you. But you have to try some stuff out and maybe try it a few times to see if it does start to feel right for you. Because it's like anything, learning a new language, at first you're going to kind of be bad at it. And then over time, you're going to build that skill that helps you be better at it.
Oh, thanks for sharing. That's amazing. As you know, I've watched your journey in your social media. You've really gotten out there, and it's been amazing seeing like where you started. I don't remember the bad one, but I know how it is. I had the same thing with ClinicSense. I didn't know how things are going to go, but you have to try. And once you try, you get over the hump, and then you're like, okay, I can start having fun with this.
Yeah.
So, and I see that with your content, and it really shows you. Yeah, it shows you. And this takes us quite nicely into finding your authenticity in your branding. I think you've showed that really well. And I know when we talk about, showing your authenticity, being yourself, or like finding a brand that's you, people often think, okay, that's like a color. Right. This is my color. This is my flower. This is my picture. How can people go beyond that and find their personal branding?
I love this question so much because that's what I thought too. And actually now I feel like the color and the logo, people tend to focus on those things first. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It is the easier thing to focus on. But actually, I personally, if I was going to give like advice from the beginning, is maybe you focus on this stuff first, and then you go back and you figure out what colors align with that and your logo and that kind of stuff. Because you really don't, it doesn't actually matter as much as you think it would, what your logo looks like and what your branding looks like when you're first starting out. I would say as you start to get more brand recognition, that stuff becomes more important. But when you're first starting out and you're just kind of starting to attract people your way, I would say your voice, your tone, your messaging, even your pictures that you use are more important than your logo and your colors. And I think you'll start to get a better feel for what those should look like after you figure out how you are going to show up online or with your clients or whatever the case may be. So like if you tend to be more like a to the point, this is what we're doing. You need to do these exercises. I'm checking in with you every week kind of person. Maybe your branding would look really different than someone who's like, I want to be your best friend. I'm going to treat you like a family member. Like, oh, it's okay. Like that's kind of, I'm your grandma. I'm going to feed you every time you come in for a massage or something like that. Your branding is going to be different than the person who's more like, to the point. So I think if you think about it like that, it's easier to think, oh yeah, it makes sense to pay a little bit more attention to what my brand story is and my brand persona versus the pieces that make that are identifying that to the outside world.
What elements do you think make up a personal brand, especially for a massage therapist?
I really do think that it is like your actual story, who you are as a massage therapist and your why. So what you're passionate about is like the key for me when I talk to massage therapists and I'm trying to help. Let's just say I'm going to put together a coaching proposal for someone. I need to do an initial consultation. I never do coaching without one because I need to hear their story. I need to hear like, why'd you get into this? Who do you enjoy working with? Or do you not know yet? what makes you passionate, what struggles have you been having, that kind of stuff. Like I really need to hear about you, so that I can understand how to approach those things that we're going to do going forward. And anytime I talk to massage therapists, there have been so many times where I wished I was recording so they could use what they said to me as a social post, because there's really nothing more like intriguing and enticing than a massage therapist who's like really comfortable just talking about their work and who they've helped, who they love to help, that kind of stuff. And it's often what we're most shy about sharing, but it really is the most compelling of all things, I think, is just like who you are as a person and what of that you bring to the table. And then the other thing I'll say is just like what you really feel good at. If you, and maybe you don't know yet, that's okay too. Sometimes that does take a while to figure out, but like if there's something that you just tend to do a lot of work in, like, you really tend to spend a lot of time just kind of like on the face and neck, what could you do with that? There are people out there who really look for that. That's something I think we forget sometimes, is like some people will write a bad review if a therapist did not spend enough time on their head and neck, because that's what they really love. So just think about if those same people were to find you who specializes in that, so I think there's those pieces that sometimes we just take for granted about ourselves that we could pay more attention to and kind of pull out. So those would be like the main things. I would say, as hard as it is, focusing on yourself first is the key to building a personal brand. It really is a highlight of who you are and what makes you unique as a massage therapist. If you struggle with this, I'll give you a tip. If you have feedback from clients, whether that be in your booking system on Google, whatever the case may be, I don't want to be unethical in promoting AI, but AI is a tool you could use. And you could take those reviews and pop them into like ChatGPT and ask it to help you pull out your unique value, or even base your unique value proposition on those reviews. So that's something that can be a really helpful tool, and maybe even help you identify who your ideal client should be. So if you're struggling, that's just like a little tool you could use if you wanted some help in that realm.
Okay, so let's talk about being vulnerable about who you are, what you want your brand to be. I know not everyone wants to get super vulnerable or too personal. How do you find a balance between being authentic and also not being too personal if you don't want to?
This is a great question, because I am one of those people. I want to connect with people authentically, but I'm not a big fan of sharing my personal life as part of my business. Something that I've always sort of like had a hard line with. So I get it if you're one of those people, and I'm not downing you if that's not your route, because actually some of the people that I've seen on social media who are very successful do an awesome mixture of their personal life and their professional life. And I think that that is beautiful. So I think you can go either way, but you have to decide for yourself what that line is, right? If you're a person like me, who's a little bit more like, I don't really want my personal life to be there for my clients in that way, how do you still connect authentically? I think that's really by sharing as much of your personal story as you're willing, or on the flip side, getting permission from clients to have like case studies, even if you don't use their name, which a lot of times that's how you would do case studies, is you would just have like an example, or maybe you would change the name, not use an image of the person, or you could use like a likeness of the person, be like names changed for privacy or whatever, but tell their story and how you helped them. So I think there's lots of ways to connect, around just turning it into your values and your mission and why you're passionate about the work without having to share too much personally. But on the other side, if you are willing to share more personal stuff, I would say just, do think about intentionally where is that line for you? Why are you sharing it, and how will it impact your clients? Is it, something that just like that connects them to you as a person? Is there a line where it's like too much? I haven't really seen too much of that, but occasionally I will see things where I'm like, yeah, that maybe that's like you know, let's just say some of the businesses here in Portland, we went through a phase, right, where we had a lot of crime and there was a lot of like windows being broken, not to bring it to a super negative place, but you know, I saw some businesses handle that really well online of like, oh, you know, we got broken into again. This sucks. Come support us, you know, that kind of thing. And then I saw some people do kind of not a great job, which was like, why are you guys always messing with us? Blah, 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 you know? And so I think there's like maybe that's not, it's a little bit personal because it's like your feelings, you know, about it. And I think I saw a lot of negative responses to those type of, you know, ways of presenting that information. Not that they didn't have a right to be very frustrated, but I think you have to think about like put yourself in your client's position and how will that be received, you know? And that can be hard to do sometimes. And sometimes you make a mistake and then you have to be like, I'm sorry, I was feeling very out of whack, you know, like my intention wasn't that. But so there's always ways to come back from it too if you do cross the line. But I think there's like you know, just really putting yourself in your client's shoes is very important when you're sharing things like that.
Amazing. I mean, we're all human in the end, so
exactly.
we make mistakes.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't live in fear of it. You know, if anything, just try it, see how it goes. Like I said, there's always a way to come back. And I think that that's also a thing that limits us is we're like afraid we're going to make a mistake that we can't come back from. That's not true. I think there would be very few things like that we would actually run into, especially as thoughtful as massage therapists are and as much as we care about other people.
I love it. Okay. Here comes the second $1 million question, $2 million question. If for anyone watching this, they remember one thing or remember a few things, what are your main takeaways? How can people really be intentional about showing their uniqueness and attracting their ideal clients, but being authentic about it at the same time?
Yeah, so probably my top one that I'll say, because I think this is the thing that prevents us from doing it in the first place, is just to do it afraid, you know. And if you feel like you can't get over that hump, then get some support. You know, there's lots of groups out there on Facebook, like the ClinicSense group, you know, if you're not on Facebook, and there's several others out there, massage therapists who are probably feeling very similar to you. So I would say if you're struggling to even get to the point where you can do it afraid, then, you know, start talking to the community about that, or, you know, connect with me. I'm always happy to be your cheerleader. And, you know, until you can get to that point. But I would say probably if you're not there and you have so much paralyzing fear around doing that, then the first thing to do is to work through that imposter syndrome. And figure out the roots of that and kind of like how you can start overcoming that, because that'll really unlock a lot in your business anyway, if that's the case for you.